Steelers are still winning with Cliff Stout at quarterback, despite the fact he's thrown 5 more interceptions than touchdowns. For 12 seasons in Pittsburgh, the Steeler running game has been this man, number 32, Franco Harris. But they also have youth. 25 of Pittsburgh's 49 players have 3 years or less experience. Second-year running back Walter Abercrombie adds an extra dimension. Pittsburgh still solid defensively. Gone is the steel curtain defense, replaced by a quicker line, but still the great linebacking core. For Minnesota, Steve Dill starts his 9th game since replacing the injured Tommy Kramer, but injuries to the offensive line have hampered the Vikings, and second-year running back Darren Nelson has been the Vikings' offense. For Bud Grant, 3 straight losses, but still the Vikings tied for the division lead. 93rd consecutive sellout here, a big battle between the AFC and the NFC Central Division leaders. You see the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they've got that 3-game lead over the Cleveland Browns in the AFC Central. In the NFC Central, the Minnesota Vikings tied with the Green Bay Packers for the top spot. Hi again, everybody. I'm Jim Kelly, former New York Jet, former Pittsburgh Steeler, John Dockery alongside. He wears a Super Bowl ring, and that's where these two teams are trying to get, but they're taking different paths, John. The Steelers have won 7 straight, and the Vikings of Bud Grant, uncharacteristically, have lost 3 in a row.
Scott Studwell described that losing streak as a ball rolling downhill about to crush the Minnesota Vikings, but he said it won't happen. The Vikings view this game more than just a game. It's more a test of manhood, not to be won with finesse.
As you know, John, when you think of the Steelers, you think of Terry Bradshaw and John Stallworth. They're both out with injuries. Lynn Swann has since retired. Franco Harris is here. He is healthy. But most of all, when you think of Pittsburgh, you think of that punishing physical defense.
They do it with defense. They're doing it again. It's intimidating. It's like a giant black and gold wave rolling over the opponents and engulfing them. Perhaps Scott Studwell summed it up best when he said, Pittsburgh doesn't play defense, they play war.
You're looking at Benny Ricardo, who will tee it up from the 35-yard line of the Minnesota Vikings, and back deep for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Henry Odom, number 44, will be to the top of your screen. Tim Harris, number 43, to the near side. And this football game from a sold-out Three Rivers Stadium is underway. Henry Odom gets a block. Needs one more to spring it big. Across the 35, out of bounds near the 38. Chased out by Rufus Bess out of South Carolina State. And the Steelers, with the home crowd and the emotion, break out on a big kickoff return. You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Cliff Stout at quarterback. Franco Harris, the NFL's second all-time leading ground gainer. Walter Abercrombie adds that extra dimension. You notice at the center spot, Emil Boris will start breaking Mike Webster's string. Webster is in, so his streak stays alive. He has now started 116 consecutive games. Franco Harris, trap blocking by the Steelers up near the 40-yard line. He picks up 3, brings up 2nd down and 7. So Mike Webster now, 156 consecutive games. Tack on one more, John Dockery. That is some streak. You look at the defense of the Vikings.
Minnesota Charlie Johnson, the former All-Pro with Philadelphia Eagles at the nose guard, all-important position. A solid bunch of linebackers led by All-Pro Matt Blair. A good defensive backfield.
Walter Abercrombie sweeps to the right side and will get close to first down yardage up near the 47-yard line. Chased out by the 3rd-year left side cornerback out of Miami of Florida, John Swain. Blocking by Wolfley and Corson, leading the charge around that right side.
And there you see Abercrombie's numbers. A nice balance Abercrombie provides for Franco Harris. Franco Harris, of course, the great trap runner up the middle that has good speed. Abercrombie, the #1 draft choice in 1982, has that acceleration outside to balance Franco up the middle.
The measurement now, the referee is Jim Tunney and his crew. Steelers, anticipating a short yardage situation, have sent in 3 tight ends: Benny Cunningham, John Rogers, and Craig Dunaway.
How'd you make out yesterday?
They might not need the 3 tight ends. By about the width of the chain, John Dockery, a first down for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
7 yards.
You talk about first series being important. The mindset of each team. Pittsburgh, they're hot, they're rolling, they're confident, they're growing. They've won 7 in a row. Minnesota Vikings are wondering what they have to do. A couple of weeks ago, they were in first place with a 2-game cushion. Now they've lost 3 in a row. Tough day for them here in Pittsburgh.
Calvin Sweeney wide to the left side. Greg Garrity is in the slot. 1st and 10 for Pittsburgh from their own 47. Garrity in motion, top of your screen. Franco Harris, nothing doing, chopped down at the line of scrimmage. Dennis Johnson in his 4th year out of USC. 52 tackles for the Minnesota Vikings, stacked him up.
And of course, the Pittsburgh Steelers have done it without, as you look at Franco's statistics, without Terry Bradshaw. Stout stepping in, growing and maturing, getting more confident week in and week out.
Has yet to throw his first pass of the afternoon. It's 2nd and 10 from approaching the 48-yard line. Abercrombie deployed to the top of your screen. Garrity in the slot, bottom left. And outside of him, again, is Calvin Sweeney. Stout can run for it. Benny Cunningham, first down inside Minnesota territory. Joey Browner on the tackle. A great block by Mike Webster.
And we talked about Mike Webster having problems. He was in the hospital yesterday with a fever. Here he throws a great block. Watch the right side of your screen. Stout with a fake, rolls out. He's a very mobile quarterback. He leads the NFL in rushing for quarterbacks. Right here, bing, Webster gets rid of number 73, Neil Elshire. It's the completion to Cunningham, first down.
A 22-yard pickup for Cunningham. First down for the Steelers, their second straight. Walter Abercrombie sweeps the right side. Huge hole. First down and more. Joey Browner chased him out of bounds, blocking over on that right side by Steve Corson, 77, 6th year out of South Carolina. Craig Wolfley in his 4th year out of Syracuse.
And the Pittsburgh offensive line is just moving the defensive line from the Minnesota Vikings right off the ball. Take a look at it here. There's Webster, number 52. You see 66 coming around, Ted Peterson. Abercrombie around the outside. Good block by Craig Wolfley, number 73. Abercrombie shows that acceleration, takes it upfield. Pittsburgh's threatening.
From the 14 of Minnesota, 1st and 10 for the Steelers. Motion by Garrity, bottom of the screen. Franco inside, trap blocking inside the 10, and he bowls his way down to about the 7-yard line. Matt Blair, in his 10th year out of Iowa State, was simply hanging on like the back of riding a Bronco bull.
And you shouldn't be surprised that Pittsburgh's running the ball this well. They're the second best in the NFL at running the ball. They're averaging 174 yards a game. As a matter of fact, one of the few teams to gain more yards on the ground than through the air.
Pittsburgh's strength, of course, the rushing game with Franco Harris, that huge offensive line. They worked out all week on the running game. Vikings knew they would face it. Minnesota said they had a good week of practice, despite the fact they've lost 3 in a row. Franco inside, slithers to about the 4. Matt Blair again in there on the tackle. It'll bring up a 3rd down and short yardage situation. And here in Pittsburgh in November, usually this time of year, we anticipate snow and ice, but that's not the case. But we do have a little bit of rain starting to sprinkle here.
A little bit of drizzle starting to sprinkle. Another reason we'd expect Pittsburgh to run the ball is because Minnesota is one of the worst in the NFL against the rush. They rank number 25.
3 tight ends again for the Steelers: Cunningham, Rogers, and Dunaway. Steelers 3rd and less than a yard. Abercrombie and Franco Harris are the running backs. Cliff Stout simply goes over the back of Mike Webster in his 10th year out of Wisconsin. And it's a first down for the Pittsburgh Steelers. 1st and goal. Pretty impressive opening drive. This is what the Vikings didn't want to do. Last week it was the same kind of a situation. Minnesota drove right down the field. They had it 1st and goal from the 4-yard line of Green Bay. Had to settle for a field goal, and after that it was all Packers.
Packers went ahead 19-0. The Vikings did come back, but they weren't able to beat the Packers last week. Thus, they're tied in the NFC Central.
Right, because Benny Ricardo missed that field goal from 31 yards out. And you talk about momentum against the Vikings last week. It's kind of set the tone for the game, a game in which they had 7 turnovers. First and goal for Pittsburgh. Stout, Cunningham, touchdown. You know, Doc, he had his choice of receivers that time. Abercrombie was open in the right corner of the end zone, and Cunningham on a crossing pattern with the 3 tight ends. He was wide open as well. Out of the hold of Craig Colquitt, Gary Anderson, the AFC's leading scorer, will try to add to the Steeler advantage. He does. Opening drive, the Steelers march it right down and punch it in. A 3-yard scoring strike from Cliff Stout to Benny Cunningham. Pittsburgh leads 7-0.
Yesterday, Chuck Noll was telling Benny Cunningham to run this play very shallow across. Here the play action fake, not much of one. Cunningham comes across the field, catches a touchdown. Pittsburgh's ahead.
Honda Accord LX 4-door sedan. It comes with a long list of standard equipment. Cruise control, air conditioning, a sophisticated stereo, a lighted mirror, power door locks and windows. The Accord LX has everything. Almost. The yacht is optional.
As a relief pitcher, everybody thought I had it easy. See Pat here? He'd pitch his heart out for 8 innings or so, and then
Sparky come in, toss 3 or 4 pitches, and walk away with a win.
But I had to
train just like the rest of us.
Yeah, well, I still like to keep in shape, and I
He drinks light beer from Miller.
See,
less filling,
and light
really tastes great.
Well, you just let me finish.
Why? You never let me finish.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Let me finish that for you, Sparky.
Chrysler Plymouth is the official team car of the
Didn't take the Steelers long. They took the opening possession, capped off by Cliff Stout's 9th scoring strike of the season. Benny Cunningham caught his 2nd touchdown of the season. A 3-yard pass, and the Steelers lead at 7-0. Leo Lewis is back deep. This is Jarvis Redwine. Out of bounds at the 21-yard line, chased out by Mike Merriweather in his 2nd year out of the Pacific. And so now Steve Dills out of Stanford, starting his 9th game since replacing the injured Tommy Kramer. That's Bud Grant, of course, the head coach for the Minnesota Vikings in his 17th season on the sideline. Steve Dills will work with Tony Galbraith and Darren Nelson in the backfield. Ted Brown is still out with a shoulder injury. The wide receivers are Sam McCullum along with Sammy White. The offensive line, Dennis Swilley, despite a shoulder problem, gets a start at center, number 67, and Dave Casper, the tight end, replacing Brewer and Joe Sensor. Motion by Leo Lewis. Pitch back. That is Tony Galbraith up near the 27-yard line. Lauren Tays in there on the tackle. Now, the strength of the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is, of course, playing against that running game. Interesting, in talking to some of the Vikings at the hotel, as you look at the Steeler defense, Doc, the Minnesota Vikings worked all week on the running game specifically. Despite the fact Pittsburgh is so strong, they feel they can run on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I don't believe they can against Jack Lambert and company, an experienced secondary led by Mel Blount, Donnie Shell. This is a good defense that ranks 2nd in the NFL.
2nd and 4. Dills to put it up. A little flare-out pattern complete to Ricky Young looping out of the backfield. You isolate the back one-on-one with a linebacker, and it's a 1st down for the Minnesota Vikings.
I think if the Minnesota Vikings are going to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers today, they're going to have to mix it up. Darren Nelson is going to have a game like he had last week. He had 278 yards in total offense, set a new record for the Minnesota Vikings. He is the big play man for the Minnesota Vikings.
From the 33 of the Steelers, 1st and 10 Pittsburgh, wide receivers left and right. Inside handoff to Tony Galbraith, who had 2 fumbles and lost them both last week against the Packers. And that again set the tone for the first half for the Vikings as they fell behind by that 19-0 score. This time Galbraith hangs onto the ball. Lambert and Tays with a tackle.
And of course the Minnesota Vikings have lost some of their home run hitters. Tommy Kramer, the inspirational quarterback, out with an injury. Joe Sensor not here. Double coverage on Sammy White has just about shut him down this season.
Double tight end alignment now. Dave Casper in there along with Bobby Brewer. Inside handoff again. Galbraith breaks it at the 40 and bowls his way up to about the 42. What a collision there. Robin Cole in his 7th year out of New Mexico, 6'2", 220. 1st-round draft pick of the Steelers back in '77.
And it's interesting, we do not see Darren Nelson in the game. He was banged up after last week's loss to the Green Bay Packers, and that superlative effort. He didn't work out all week long. We haven't seen him in the game yet.
Well, Bud Grant told us last night at the hotel if we did see a Darren Nelson, he wouldn't be anywhere near 100% in what he did last week against the Green Bay Packers. In fact, he said he'd be used sparingly, if at all. Young in the backfield with Galbraith on 3rd and less than a yard. Ricky Young, 1st down, Minnesota up near the 48 of the Vikings. Rick Woods in his 2nd year out of Boise State made the tackle secure for the Steelers.
An important 1st down to a man. As you look at Ricky Young's statistics, to a man, the Minnesota Vikings said they'll have to pick up the intensity level. A couple of weeks ago against St. Louis, when this losing streak started, they were totally flat. Then they lost to Tampa Bay. They were embarrassed. Last week against Green Bay, an important game, they didn't play with the intensity that they needed. Today they're hoping to get it against a high-flying Pittsburgh Steelers.
From the 48 of the Vikings, Lewis wide left, Sammy White to the top of your screen. Gary Dunn, 67. For the Steelers, looked like he jumped off sides. We'll check with Jim Tunney and see if he was drawn off. That's Art McNally's $10 word coming up here. I think encroachment, right?
Encroachment. Defense. 6-7. Still first down.
Let's see if it changes the play call at all on 1st and 5 now. Again, Lewis to the bottom of your screen. Sammy White to the top. Lone running back, Tony Galbraith. Down to the 42 and close to first down yardage goes the former Missouri Tiger. Came over to the Vikings in a trade with the Saints back in '81, and Jack Lambert, the veteran, 10th year at Penn State, made the tackle. Kent State.
Tony Galbraith, a much better pass receiver out of the backfield than he is as a runner in New Orleans. 4 of the 5 years he was there, he was a top pass receiver, one of the top in the top 10 in the NFC. So he's more of a runner. Without Ted Brown, the loss of Ted Brown is really a problem for the Minnesota Vikings. He was their bread and butter man, not only a good pass receiver out of the backfield, but their bread and butter man on the ground. They don't really have anybody to replace him.
Another first down for the Minnesota Vikings inside Pittsburgh Steeler territory. It's interesting, though, John, as you take a look at that score, a 16-yard scoring strike from Kenny Anderson to Dan Ross, 12:49 left to go down in Bengal land. The Vikings always seem to rise to the occasion. When a good player like a Tommy Kramer goes down, Steve Dills comes in, and everybody else tries to pick up some of the slack. A short pickup of about 2 yards by Galbraith. You saw Dave Casper go in motion. He threw the lead block. Wes Hamilton pulled in his 8th year out of Tulsa, but then the Steeler defense made the adjustment.
The Minnesota offensive line has been having a problem as you look at Bud Grant. Last week, Steve Dills was sacked 6 times. The offensive line is hurting. Dennis Swilley, the center, number 67, is playing with a sore ankle. Gary Dunn, the nose guard, right over him. That could be a problem for Bud Grant all day long.
2nd and 8 for the Minnesota Vikings. They trail 7-0. Dills to put it up. Threw that one out of bounds. Pressure by Laurentiis. Penalty flag may be down, and Dills is definitely down at the 47-yard line. Interesting, because the pressure that Taves put on Dills right there, Doc, he was not able to see Leo Lewis curling open at about the 20-yard line. Leo Lewis was wide open, but Dills, because of the pressure, never saw it.
Dills last week must have been hit close to 15 times. He was sacked, as I mentioned before, 6 times. He's taken a beating all year long because an offensive line has been like Swiss cheese. Now, if Steve Dills can't play, then it's either Archie Manning or Wade Wilson. We'll find out in a moment. Pittsburgh leads here at Three Rivers Stadium.
Honda would like to make a point about the new car. It goes an EPA estimated 51 miles per gallon, 67 highway. It's the #1 gas mileage car in America, period. The new Honda Civic CRX. The longest distance between 2 points.
The Grand Coulee Dam, built to harness the power of the Columbia River and provide electricity for millions. That took bold imagination, and it made this country grow. Today, I see that same kind of imagination in hundreds of small to mid-sized companies whose new ideas, new jobs, and new technologies will continue to build America. At First Jersey Securities, we specialize in discovering such emerging growth companies for today's investors with vision. First Jersey Securities. Come grow with us.
Steve Dills ran out under his own power. Archie Manning is playing his first down now in a Minnesota Viking uniform since that trade from the Houston Oilers. 3rd and 8. Slot formation to the left side from the 40-yard line of Pittsburgh. Tony Galbraith. First down, Minnesota, inside the 30-yard line. Donnie Shell hanging on. Archie Manning goes off, and Steve Dills comes back in.
You have to be surprised the way the Minnesota Vikings are running the ball against this fine Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Ranks number 2 in the league, 4th against the rush.
Galbraith, the lone running back again. Lewis wide to the left. Fumble. And it looked as if Steve Dills got it back. Vikings on the short end, 7-0. Meanwhile, let's find out on Green Bay. Brent?
Packers strike first, and it's a splendid catch by J.J. John Jefferson. Lynn Dickey is high. Touchdown, Green Bay. 7-0 over Detroit. Let's go back to Jim Kelly.
Brent, the Vikings, of course, know only too well what John Jefferson and James Lofton and Lynn Dickey did last week. Steve Dills on 2nd and 11. Play action, roll out right side. Open in the middle. Touchdown! Sam McCollum. And John Dockery, it was the play action that actually allowed McCollum to break free, and more importantly, Steve Dills to see him breaking free.
Steve Dills had time. He was going to throw elsewhere, but then he looked back. Sam McCollum one-on-one on Mel Blount. Mel Blount, of course, 14 years in the league, just doesn't turn on the speed there to make it up. Touchdown, Minnesota Vikings back in this contest.
Benny Ricardo, and we've got a tie football game. So the Steelers score on their first possession. The Minnesota Vikings come right back and answer with a touchdown of their own. These division leaders all even at 7.
It's one of my bigger days.
Let me buy a beer.
Sure.
These fans, I love them. When I came in, they didn't recognize me at first, but then when I told them who I was, next thing you know, they're buying me my favorite beer, light beer from Miller. They know us ex-big leaguers drink light because it's got 1/3 less calories than their regular beer. It's less filling, and it tastes great. Thanks.
Hey, it's a pleasure to buy a beer for a great pitcher like Whitey Ford.
Hey. So I lied.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Hey, Whitey, I thought you were a lefty.
Oh, that's right.
The line. The hood line is low for less wind resistance and more visibility. The roof line is long for more headroom and usable space. The outline is aerodynamic for more performance. The new line of Civic hatchbacks from Honda. The line is drawn for the future.
We're back at a sold-out Three Rivers Stadium here in Pittsburgh. A big battle between the AFC's leading Pittsburgh Steelers and the Minnesota Vikings, who lead the NFC Central. They're tied with the Green Bay Packers, and as you heard from Brent Musburger, and we'll be updating all the scores and highlights with Brent and Irv back at NFL Control. The Vikings are out, or the Packers are out in front, 7-0 in their game this afternoon. We expected a defensive struggle, Doc. This one could be wide open.
And it's so important for the Minnesota Vikings to come back after falling 7-0 behind 7-0 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially at home where the Steelers are ever so tough.
Benny Ricardo will boot it from the 35. Odom and Harris are back deep. This is Henry Odom. Almost a repeat of the opening kickoff. This one stacked up at the 27. Willie Teal, number 37, in there in the tackle.
And that scoring drive by the Minnesota Vikings was 11 plays, 79 yards, 5 minutes, 34 seconds. Finally, Dills found Sam McCollum beating Mel Blount. 30-yard touchdown to tie the score.
1st and 10 for Cliff Stout and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Greg Garrity wide to the right side. Calvin Sweeney deployed to the right. Motion by Sweeney, top of your screen. Franco gets the call, hurdles over a couple of Vikings at the line of scrimmage, and approaches the 29-yard line in the grasp of Scott Studwell. And Studwell, he didn't mince any words with you on the telephone earlier this week when talking about the preparation for this game. He said all of the Vikings know their backs are up against the wall.
And he says it's going to be a war. We have to rise to the challenge. As Studwell leaves, situational defenses change. The linemen, four down linemen come in now to get the best of the pass rush. They put in an extra defensive back to cover in the secondary.
They are also very concerned, Studwell and the Vikings defense, about that man, Cliff Stout. They said they have to be contained conscious about Cliff Stout because of his running ability. He leads all the NFL quarterbacks in rushes. Inside handoff to Franco Harris, and maybe they lost a half a yard. So it'll bring up third and a passing situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Doug Martin and Randy Holloway in there in the tackle defensively. Neil Lomax, a touchdown toss to Pat Tilley, 71 yards. That's more than a toss, that's a heave. And of course the Cardinals and the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day right here on CBS. We've got a football feast for you, and it all starts with the NFL today. Hawthorne is in for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He, of course, a wide receiver as well as a running back. They think he's got great hands and great potential. Slot to the right side. They need 9. Incomplete over the middle, looking for Calvin Sweeney, and the Steelers will punt the pigskin away. Watching Calvin Sweeney walk off, as we talked to him yesterday at the Pittsburgh Steelers workout, he said, I really like to make that first catch because people always compare me to Stallworth and Swan. If I make the first catch, it gives me a little extra confidence for the rest of the football game.
I know people would say, well, Lynn Swan would have had that, and of course Stout has that same problem. He's getting over it because the Steelers are 9-2 and they're on their way to the playoffs, so people are no longer saying, well, Bradshaw would have done this, this, or this.
Craig Colquitt, who averages about 42 yards a punt, is back deep. Rufus Best, 21, awaits at the 31-yard line of the Vikings. Pittsburgh might have taken too much time. Jim Tunney with a preliminary indication. They did. That'll back them up 5 more, so it'll be 4th and 15.
Delay. 5 yards. Still 4th down.
Rufus Bess, again number 21, is back deep for the Vikings. He averages about 7 yards a return on the punts. Second year out of South Carolina State. And there again is Craig Colquitt out of Tennessee in his 5th year, who averages about 42 yards a punt. High spiraling kick. He banged a beauty. It backs Bess up to the 23. They've got the wall on the left side. He springs it out near the 36. And a penalty flag is thrown out of bounds, chased out by David Little in his 3rd year from Florida. Let's check the flag with Jim Tunney. The Oilers have come back against the Bengals down in Cincinnati with a field goal by Florian Kemp of 34 yards. Cincinnati still leads 7-3. Of course, you take a look at the AFC Central Division standings. The Pittsburgh Steelers lead with a record of 9-2. They've got a 3-game lead over the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are playing the Patriots up in Foxborough this afternoon. Cleveland is 6-5. Cincinnati 4-7. And Houston, they just won their first game. They are 1-10.
And then you look over in that Central Division in the NFC, you see Green Bay, Minnesota tied. Detroit only a game back. Detroit beats Green Bay today, and Minnesota should lose. That'll be a 3-way tie.
A leg of push in the back during the run back. Number 33, 10 yards, 1st down.
Again, problems that plagued the Vikings all last week in that loss to Green Bay. Penalties and mistakes. 7 fumbles last week against Green Bay, including a costly penalty that halted a touchdown drive. We're tied 7-all.
If you're looking for an investment firm, I've got some advice for you. I want to tell you the single best way to choose that investment firm. Just ask a lot of investors a lot of questions. Ask if their broker really listens, really cares, and ask them how they're doing. I'm telling you this because I believe you're going to hear a lot of good things about one company, Dean Witter. I think you'll find Dean Witter worth asking about.
Dean Witter, worth asking about.
There's still time to get to Sears' biggest automotive sale of the year. Save 10 to 50% on every Sears tire. Weather Handler all-season radials as low as $99 a set of 4. Road Handler highway radials as low as $44.99 each. 10W40 oil, 79 cents a quart, and Die-Hard car batteries just $49.99 with trade. Sale ends Saturday. At Sears, we install confidence, day and night.
There's more for your life at Sears. Monday on Emerald Point, Leslie's secret affair explodes while Hillary faces a new kind of blackmail.
What's your price? I want to marry your father.
Time remaining in the first quarter, tied 7-all, 1st and 10 from the 25. Handoff, Tony Galbraith, inside, cuts it back against the grain, and gets a forearm to the helmet at the 32-yard line. Donnie Shell and Rick Woods, that's making a tackle secure. We talk about the physical, the punishment of the Pittsburgh defense.
They expect it to be a war. The Pittsburgh defense has always been that way. That's one of the reasons they have an edge when anyone comes to play them. People have to start thinking about the physical aspects of it. And at times, if you're doing that, you forget about the technical aspects of playing your game.
McCullum, he has the touchdown reception wide to the right. Quick count. Ricky Young dives up near the 35. Ricky, in his 9th year out of Jackson State, came over to Minnesota in the trade with San Diego back in '78. And Jack Lambert, piling on, made the tackle for Pittsburgh.
You talk about it happening so many times in the NFL. People taking up the slack. Ted Brown is hurt. We've mentioned it from Minnesota. Darren Nelson not playing. So Tony Galbraith carrying the ball already 7 times, has 41 yards. Ricky Young also contributing.
That offensive line came into the game with a little something to prove, I think, after the game against Green Bay when Dills had such a rough afternoon in terms of pass protection. 3rd and short, double tight in there now for the Vikings. Brewer and Casper. First down. Ricky Young went underneath that time and kind of submarine, and the Vikings keep the ball. Dunn and Lambert in there for the Steelers, but it's another first down. However, we've got a procedure call against the Minnesota Vikings. Dills goes up to check and find out who it was. Jim Tunney will tell us. There is Bud Grant. You know, he told us last night in the hotel, after losing 3 in a row and with the Steelers having won 7 straight, this is not the time of year you want to be playing Pittsburgh.
Illegal formation. Number 78 reported eligible, but was not on the end of the line. Still 3rd down.
But Bud Grant also said, as you look at 3rd and 6, Bud Grant also says, you know what, I've been in a few debt fights when I was a kid, and that's what we're going to do when we go into Pittsburgh. We're going to rise to the occasion, to the challenge, and put up the fight. And that's what they're doing so far in this game.
3rd and 6, slot to the left side. Leo Lewis wide right. Tony Galbraith, nothing doing. Robin Cole got him down low around the ankles, and the Vikings will have to punt. Interesting. So after each team drives up and down the field and scores a touchdown, now the defense start to make some adjustments.
And this is a good Pittsburgh defense as you see Robin Cole leaving the field. So instead of a mistake for the Minnesota Vikings, instead of a first down, a continuing drive, a building of their confidence, what do? They make a mistake and they have to punt it away to Pittsburgh.
Interesting, too, on 3rd and a passing situation for the 2nd straight time. Bud Grant elects to keep it on the ground. Coleman back to do the kicking. He averages about 41.5 yards per kick in his 7th year out of Florida A&M. Paul Skansky, the rookie, averaging about 9 yards a return, is back deep at the 25. Look out! A bobbled snap, and Coleman gets it away. That was simply great individual effort by Coleman, but there will be a penalty flag down. Got to believe that the Vikings had a man downfield too soon.
You'd have to think that, of course, with him Coleman holding the ball so long, his coverage counts a couple of beats, then they go downfield. They don't see the ball. Here's the call against the Vikings. Coleman did a heck of a job to get that ball away. He was rushed, pulled it down, ran a few steps, and finally kicked it.
I wouldn't be surprised to see the Steelers decline it. They've got the ball up around their own 40-yard line and pretty good field position.
Ineligible man, number 58, downfield during the punt, declined. First down, Pittsburgh.
Exactly right, Mr. Jim Kelly.
So both the Vikings and the Steelers have a touchdown pass. We've got a 7-all tie, the AFC and NFC Central Division leaders.
We are an explorer, a farmer, a miner, and an insurance company. We're a pipeline, a truck line, a gold mine, and a leasing company. We're a builder, a printer, a logger, and an energy company. We are more than 41,000 men and women working in 18 different industries all across America. We are Southern Pacific. We also run a railroad.
Time left in our first quarter here at a sold-out Three Rivers Stadium. We talk about Greg Coleman. Watch the pressure by Donnie Shell and then the great job Coleman does.
Coleman would have had this block. He bobbles it a little bit. Shell comes in right there, misses him. Coleman starts to run, knows he has no place to go, finally kicks it, and probably saves the Minnesota Vikings 40 yards or so.
No question about it, because if they block the punt, they either take it in for a touchdown or they've got it inside the 20. They start now from their own 40, the Steelers do. 1st and 10. Play action, Stout gives the pump fake. He's got Calvin Sweeney out of bounds at the 20-yard line. Bumped out by Willie Teal, but that ball could not have been caught regardless.
And that was what Calvin Sweeney and Stout told us yesterday. They said Minnesota Viking defensive backs have a tendency to settle around 15 yards. That time Sweeney just ran an out and up, and he had Teal beaten. Stout didn't get him the ball.
Sweeney was open for a moment, and Stout threw the ball out of bounds. He also had a wide-open Franco Harris down at about the 50-yard line, but once he gave it the pump fake, he was looking at Sweeney the whole way.
A good idea, though. It loosens up that secondary.
2nd and 10 from the 39. Slot formation to the left side. Franco Harris, the lone running back, and Stout will go airborne again. Grounded, however, at the 30-yard line in the grasp of Charlie Johnson and a host of Minnesota Vikings on defense.
And that's the kind of enthusiasm and pressure that Charlie Johnson and Duck White, number 72, have to get. They must put pressure on Cliff Stout. What Stout wants to do is to establish the running game, have it all his own way, and pick his spots to throw the ball. That way, that time, he diverted from his policy a little bit by play-action pass, trying to get it all on 1st down, put him in a passing situation on 2nd down. Now it's 3rd and long, not a situation that Stout is that good at.
Sweeney in the slot left. Outside of him is Hawthorne. To the top of your screen is Greg Garrity. Stout needs 17. He can run for part of it. Will dive down at the 45 and still be 4 yards shy of 1st down yardage. Matt Blair had a shot at him. And Cliff Stout, that was not by design. That was by fear, I guess.
By fear or by improvisation, as Cliff Stout told us. He doesn't run. He's not the leading quarterback rushing the ball in the NFL by design. They only have 1 or 2 plays for him to run. He does it when necessary. That time the receivers were covered. He wisely tucked it in and made some yardage, even though he didn't get the 1st down.
It's 4th and 4 for the Steelers, but that's the end of the first quarter. Steve Dills, a scoring strike, and that was answered by one for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, we're tied at 7.
The Honda Accord LX 4-door sedan. It comes with a long list of standard equipment. Cruise control, air conditioning, a sophisticated stereo, a lighted mirror, power door locks and windows. The Accord LX has everything. Almost. The yacht is optional.
All right, we're up 15. We got this game won.
Yeah, you guys are buying a light beer from Miller. Yeah, let's Philly.
One out to go. Yeah, what can he do to us now?
Hey, I'll keep the change. Here's Rodney! Any pinch hitters left?
Here I am.
Come on, lady!
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Hey, wait a minute. This game isn't over yet. I caught that ball.
By Honda, makers of the Accord LX 4-door sedan. Light beer from Miller. Everything you've always wanted in a beer, and less. And by the investment firm of Dean Witter. We're worth asking about.
Jim Kelly and John Dockery back live at Pittsburgh's Three Rivers Stadium. We're tied 7-all. The Steelers and the Vikings. Colquitt will go for the coffin corner near side. Rufus Best will watch it bounce at the 20 and then take a terrific bounce inside the 5, out of bounds at the 4-yard line. Colquitt, he had that one wired end zone to end zone.
When it's going right for you, it's going right. Of course, Pittsburgh on a 7-game roll. I thought it was interesting that Bud Grant compared the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Washington Redskins.
What's going on with that Giants game? Let's go to New York. Here's Brent Musburger.
Jim, so far, the Giants are dominating the Eagles. Watch Butch Woolfolk. Sweep right, blockers out in front. Giants look pretty good. They lead by 10 points. Back to Jim.
Giants are 2-8-1. The Eagles are 4-7. All the scores and highlights with Brent and Irv at halftime. They were a long way, 14:52 in the second quarter. Huge hole right side for the Vikings. Galbraith breaks it up across the 5 to about the 8-yard line. Blocking over there by Wes Hamilton, 61. Timmy Irvin, 76.
And Tony, of course, we all know Jack Lambert, number 58. Take a look right here. He gets taken out of the play. He steps up. It is taken out by Wes Hamilton, number 61. Galbraith gets a few yards.
2nd and 6 for the Vikings, digging a huge hole. Gary Dunn, and he wrestles Galbraith down, so now it's be careful time.
It's an interesting situation for Bud Grant and Steve Dills now. Do you be careful and give the ball back to the Pittsburgh Steelers with good field position, or do you go for it on 3rd and 7?
Well, I guess you've got to maybe do some play action passing here and try to pick up the first down. You don't want to punt from your own end zone. And then if Dills is pressured or the receivers are covered, you can throw the ball out of bounds.
And they're so good at that. The Minnesota Vikings, one of the best possession, high percentage passing teams in the NFL.
We've got 13:46. The Minnesota Vikings have asked for a timeout. Pittsburgh scored first in their first possession. The Vikings did likewise. We're knotted up 7-all.
Pontiac! Like a burst from the sun, 2000 Sunbird has arrived. Pontiac's overhead cam 5-speed performer. 2000 Sunbird, easy to own, fun to drive. 2000 Sunbird, Pontiac excitement precisely the way you like it. 2000 Sunbird, only from Pontiac.
We build excitement, Pontiac.
What you are about to see is not science fiction. It's Seiko Sport Tech. For the serious runner, an amazing multifunction training watch with detachable cable release. There's the world's first analog quartz chronograph. Seiko watches to time competition sports. And an incredible watch you talk to that talks back. Seiko Sport Tech. Welcome to the 21st century. Seiko watches and clocks at your authorized dealer.
Next week will be week 13 of the NFL season. John and I will be in the Superdome in New Orleans for the Vikings-Saints clash. Philadelphia travels to RFK Stadium in Washington. The Bears at home against San Francisco. And then on doubleheader Sunday here on CBS, the Green Bay Packers against the Atlanta Falcons, or the New York Giants, who are right now shellacking the Eagles 10-0 against the Los Angeles Raiders. It all starts with NFL Today. Brent, Irv, Jimmy, and everybody back in New York in the NFL Today. 3rd and 7, be careful time, and Bud Grant elects to be careful and conservative. Across the 12-yard line goes Tony Galbraith, and now they'll punt from their own end zone and give the Pittsburgh Steelers excellent field position.
And really, you don't want to let the Pittsburgh Steelers get that momentum back. And you hear the fans rising to the occasion. They love that defense. They love their Steelers. Here, Coleman had trouble on his last punt. Donnie Shell almost blocked it after it was bobbled. I'll bet the Pittsburgh Steelers will be coming again.
Paul Scansey is back there as Coleman, and what he's done so far this afternoon. Lucky, of course, to get it away after the bobbled snap. Scansey averaging about 9 yards a return, awaits at midfield. Coleman didn't get quite all of this one. Scansey will fair catch it at the 47-yard line. Good field position. We're tied up 7-all. Steelers in their first possession drove right down the field. Stout, his 9th touchdown pass, 3 yards to Cunningham, 7-0 with a point after, and then Dills, a 30-yard scoring strike to Sam McCullum, 7-all, and that's how the first quarter came to an end. Now let's check Jim Tunney and the penalty call on that punt by the Minnesota Vikings.
Ineligible man, number 50, downfield on the punt, penalty declined. First down.
First down in excellent field position for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, we are knotted up 7-all. The battle between the AFC and NFC Central Division leaders.
I mortgaged my house to get my first tug. Believe me, the Genie T needed plenty of work.
Good night, Skipper.
Today, I own 2 others just like her, because we give our customers a good, honest pull for the money, and that pays off. People who make Meisterbrow work the same way. These days, I can pick any beer I want. This tastes as good as Budweiser, and it doesn't cost as much. Gentlemen, the drinking lamp is lit.
Introducing Meisterbrow. It tastes as good as Budweiser at a better price.
Pontiac.
It's been called one of the most innovative American cars ever. Its unique Enduraflex body panels resist minor dents and will never rust. Introducing Pontiac Fiero, America's first mid-engine production car. Fiero, a brilliant example of Pontiac innovation in action. Fiero, only from Pontiac.
We build excitement. Pontiac.
College basketball returns to CBS Sports as Kansas takes on Hakeem Abdul-Olajuwon and the rest of Houston's Phi Slama Jama crew Saturday on CBS Sports.
It has been that here in the Steel City ever since Chuck Noll took over. He inherited a 1-13 season, and then 6 years later, the Steelers on the way to winning 4 Super Bowls in the space of 6 years. 1st and 10, Abercrombie sweeps the left side. He just outran the blocking and goes out of bounds, chased out by Joey Browner, the rookie from USC. Despite the fact that the Vikings played so poorly last week, I want to tell you, because I looked at the tapes of the game, Joey Browner had himself a whale of a football game.
He definitely did. And, you know, you look at the Pittsburgh offense, and when you have Walter Abercrombie and Franco Harris in there, neither one an impressive blocker. In the old days, of course, Rocky Bleier used to be the great blocker leading Franco Harris. But now, against the 3-4 defenses, that lead blocker on a defensive lineman isn't as important as it used to be.
Rocky Bleier, and before that, Frenchie Fuqua. Rocky stepped up in the booth during the last commercial timeout. He looks like he could still play. Franco, inside handoff, gets a block, breaks it to the 45, bowls his way down to the 40, and still about a yard shy of the first down yardage. John Swain, the man that Franco last ran over.
And it's amazing, talking to Franco Harris yesterday, how he felt the last few weeks not that productive for Franco, under 50 yards a game as you look at Franco and what the Steelers have done when he's rushed for over 100 yards. Franco said, you know, I feel I've been a little bit tentative. I've been thinking too much, wondering whether the block was going to be there. I have to assume it's going to be there and let my instincts take over. That's from a man who's played 12 years and is chasing Jimmy Brown.
The amazing thing about Franco is he said he still wants to improve, still thinks he needs to improve. Play action, Stout, he'll run it. Out of bounds at the 38-yard line. He may have just made the first down as he extended his body. Matt Blair and Scott Studwell chased him out of bounds. Cliff Stout from Youngstown State. His parents, his mom and dad, were here yesterday along with his wife watching the workout.
And there you look at his rushing statistics, leading rusher among quarterbacks. He picks up that first down.
The Battle of Tampa Bay and the Chicago Bears. Let's go back to New York. Here again is Brent.
Jim, it is an absolute monsoon down in Tampa. Look at that driving rain. And finally, the Bears score a touchdown. It's Matsui now from the 2-yard line. They get in, so they lead it 7-0. Back to Jim Kelly.
I guess, Brent, if the Bucks continue to lose and the Oilers continue to lose, when they do battle next week, it'll be the Solo Bowl. Each team with 1 win. Stout, airborne, got Abercrombie. Abercrombie to the 35, to the 30. Picks up 8 grueling yards. 2nd down and 2 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Willie Teal in there in the coverage that time. You saw a more maturing Cliff Stout. This is what he said was his biggest asset over the last 9 or 10 games for the Pittsburgh Steelers. In fact, he doesn't go to the primary receiver now. He's able to look off and go to the 2nd or the 3rd receiver.
That's exactly what he does. Abercrombie just to the left of your screen, goes out in the flat, sets up, Stout had an idea he might go there. You see the lineman, he makes a good move right there, gets some blocks. Number 52, Webster, occupying number 55 inside. That's Scott Studwell. Good play.
From the 30 of the Vikings, 2nd and 2. Franco falls forward near the 28. He'll be about a half a yard shy of first down yardage. Dennis Johnson, 52 in his 4th year from USC, stacked him up, and there's a penalty flag down, holding against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And as you look at Franco Harris, 33 years old, 12 years in the league, there's only 2 other men in the NFL active running backs who are older. That's John Riggins, 34 years young for the Washington Redskins, and Newhouse from Dallas, 3 months older than Franco.
Number 7 yards, still down.
You know, quarterback Cliff Stout got very defensive with number 32, Franco Harris, when talking about pursuing Jim Brown's record. I'm sure you heard Jim Brown's comments on the NFL today, where he doesn't think running out of bounds is exactly attributable to being the #1 rusher in NFL history. Franco does that to preserve his career, and Cliff Stout said, look, if Franco were just in here chasing records, he wouldn't be starting, and he wouldn't have amassed over 800 yards. Penalty flag is down again. Looks like holding against the Steelers again, and Stout goes out of bounds again. Chased out by Randy Holloway in his 6th year out of Pittsburgh.
Good pressure by the defensive line from the Minnesota Vikings, especially Holloway. Ted Peterson, number 66, having problems with him.
Preliminary indication holding, and looks like it'll be against Ted Peterson, backing up the Steelers again. They had good field position. They had also picked up a first down at the 38. They had the ball down at the 30-yard line.
52, decline. 3rd down.
It's Mike Webster, the 10-year center. Guess that neck's bothering him a little bit.
Webster, of course, didn't practice yesterday, was in the hospital for a while for tests. He had a virus. But true to form, Mike Webster, All-Pro, is out there leading the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think he is really the leader of the offensive team of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
That virus, a cervical inflammation. Sounds like it might be something on the neck bone, but it's actually an inflammation and an infection. 11:06 to go. 2nd quarter, tied 7-all, Steelers and Vikings. Stout, screen left to Franco. Got a convoy. Webster with a big block. Another penalty flag at the 45. Joey Browner, the man that made the hit on Franco Harris, but let's check the call again with Jim Tunney. Illegal man downfield. Back-to-back holding calls, and the Steelers are self-destructing in this drive.
And one of the things that the Steelers really don't want to do, they're not an offense that is refined like some of the offenses in the NFL. They're one that's growing, maturing. It's been a conservative offense while Cliff Stout finds his way in the NFL. And they don't have that big play capability. When Bradshaw was here, boy, he'd get that play, he'd throw to Swan or Stallworth, and he'd get 20, 30, 40 yards back in no time. Stout hasn't done that. He's more of a patient type of quarterback. That's how he characterizes himself. I'm patient. I like the long, continuous drive.
He laughs when he talks about Bradshaw. He said, you know, Terry liked to try to score in 2 or 3 plays. Right. He said, I need a long, sustained drive.
Ineligible lineman, number 52.
And that long sustained scoring drive that Stout alludes to, that fits more in the philosophy of Pittsburgh coach Chuck Noll. He likes to take it and kind of ram the ball down your throat. He feels that if you have a drive like that, you do it with a running game, eventually you're simply going to wear down and wear out the defense of the opposition. And
Chuck Noll is also a man who prides himself in having one of the best conditioned teams in the NFL, and traditionally he has.
Well, after taking the ball down to the 30 of the Vikings, Minnesota's defense stiffened, but more importantly, the Steelers self-destructed. Back-to-back holding calls and an illegal man downfield, and Colquitt will line drive it into the end zone, and the Vikings come away cleanly. They'll start 1st and 10 from their own 20-yard line. So the Vikings get a break. Pittsburgh with a couple of penalties, and now with 10:49 left to go, and thus far a scoreless 2nd quarter, the AFC and the NFC Central leaders square at 7.
People moving into a newly built home often get a lower rate on their homeowner's insurance. But what of an older home that needs a little work? Well, the way the Travelers figures it, when people do some renovation or take care of their property, insurance companies should also recognize that with a lower rate. To see if you qualify, call an independent Travelers agent. Maybe we can save you money at a time when you need it most.
From Pontiac comes the one-of-a-kind 84 Firebird Trans Am. You can order it with aerodynamic ground effects, a high-output 5-liter V8, high-tech turbo wheels, and a close ratio 5-speed. And knowing you, you probably will. Trans Am, only from Pontiac.
We build excitement. Pontiac.
We're back at Pittsburgh. Square at 7. McCullum wide to the left side. Leo Lewis, top of your screen. Dill sets the Vikings down. Motion by Casper to the bottom. Pitch back. A love fumble. Football. The Vikings got it back. Off the artificial surface, Minnesota gets a break. Galbraith dribbles to about the 23. Looked like Jim Huff, 51, fell on the football in his 6th year out of Utah. Galbraith, as we said, had 2 fumbles last week against the Green Bay Packers and lost them both.
And before that, he hadn't fumbled in 60 attempts. But one of the big problems last week against Green Bay, they fumbled 7 times in the first half.
10-15 and counting in a thus far scoreless second quarter from Pittsburgh's Three Rivers Stadium. 2nd and 7 Vikings. Jarvis Redwine ran the wrong way and gets stacked up at the 15-yard line. Donnie Shell came crashing through, and then a host of Pittsburgh Steelers in pursuit. I got something for you.
Yes. This telecast, folks, I'd like to tell you, is presented by the authority of the National Football League, and it is intended for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or other use of this telecast without the express written consent that is, of the Pittsburgh Steelers and the National Football League is prohibited. Thank you, Jim Kelly.
That last carry, by the way, Doc, by Jarvis Redwine was his first of the season. Passing situation for the Vikings. Slot formation to the left side. Leo Lewis, top of the screen. Steve Dills, and here comes Pittsburgh. Almost intercepted by number 57, Mike Merriweather, in the nickel defense in his 2nd year out of the Pacific. Batted the ball up in a punting situation for the Vikings.
Pittsburgh lives by the pressure defense. They came into this game with 21 interceptions. They almost got another one then. They had 41 sacks. They got to Dills with some pressure. They didn't sack him. They had 13 fumble recoveries. That's how Pittsburgh plays defense, aggressive with pressure.
Steelers should come out of this with pretty good field position again. Skansky, and what he has done so far in the season, averaging about 9 yards a return. This time Coleman hangs on, and he bangs a high but a wobbly kick. Skansky at the 50, and down he goes. Great special teams play by number 39. That is Carl Lee, the rookie out of Marshall. And that, in talking to some of the Vikings, as you know, Doc, was what Minnesota thought they had to do. They needed the special teams to try to pick up some of the intensity. Somebody had to make some kind of a big play. We are tied 7-all, 9:08 to go in the second quarter. The battle between the AFC and the NFC Central Division leaders.
Pontiac has created a driver's car the whole family can enjoy. Pontiac 6000. Enjoy the styling. Enjoy the room. Enjoy the handling. Pontiac 6000. Enjoy. The front-wheel drive 6000, only from Pontiac.
We build excitement. Pontiac.
Welcome to today's Quality Audit Review.
Every morning, special teams of General Motors people meet to talk about the cars they built the day before. They're called quality audit teams, and their involvement has given GM a better way to deliver the quality you want.
We've got a fine car here. Great job, folks.
When they're through, they take their knowledge back to the line. Nobody sweats the details.